We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Amud Aleph and Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 20a. And the previous summit, the Gemara asked, why does the pasuk say lahaktir isha when it's talking about the kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, the washing of the hands and the feet of the Kohanim before they do the avod in the Beis Hamikdash? And the Gemara now continues and answers, Ma'hu detema, what might you have said? Hani mili avoda de ma'akva kapara, that the washing of the hands and feet is critical for an avoda that's required for the atonement. Aval avoda de lo ma'akva kapara, but an avoda that's not required for the atonement for the kapara lo, so then maybe the washing of the hands and the feet would not be critical. Kamash Malan, that's what the pasuk teaches us when it says lahaktir isha, that for that as well, the washing of the hands and feet is necessary. Rashi explains, one might have thought that a person needs to sanctify his hands and his feet in the morning by an avoda that's required for the kapara. Kagon, for example, dam ukmitza, the blood and the fistful by the karban mincha. Avol kol haktaras emurin, but when it comes to the burning of the emurin, the burning of the sacrificial portions on the mizbeach, the lo ma'akva, which is not required for atonement, one might have said that the sanctification of the hands and the feet is not required. That's why the pasuk says lahaktir isha, again by kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. And the Gemara continues, Ki Yasser Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Boy Ilfa, that Ilfa asked the following question. L'divrei ha'omer ein lina moelos bekiddush yadayim v'raglayim. According to the one who says that lina is not effective by kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, that was the opinion of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon on the previous summit. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon said that once a Kohen washes his hands and feet and he does the avoda and he's continuously doing the avoda, he doesn't have a hesach hadas from the avoda, he doesn't leave the Beis HaMikdash, so that kiddush yadayim v'raglayim is actually effective even for the next day. He doesn't have to do it that next morning. The kiddush yadayim v'raglayim can continue. And so according to that opinion, May Kior, what about the waters of the Kior themselves, the waters of the basin, Mahu Sheyifsalu, do those become disqualified? Mi Amrinon Hani Lamai L'Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, do we say, what is the purpose of these waters? The purpose of the water is for the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. And Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim Gufayu Lo Pasal Behu Lina, and the Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim itself, Lina is not a disqualification, so the water should not be disqualified. Odilmor maybe Kavan Dekadish Lu B'Klishares Mifsali, since it is sanctified in a klishares, so in general there is a psul of lina by klishares, and that should apply to the waters of the kior as well. And Rashi explains, Maushe yifsalu belina imlo shaka bebor the amrinan beseder yuma de mishkalahu. In Meseches Yuma, they say that what they used to do was they would sink the kior into a cistern, and that was actually a way of making that it was not disqualified through lina. So here the question specifically is, when they did not do that, they didn't lower it into the bore, they didn't lower the kior into the cistern, and so therefore in that situation, again, the question is, would the waters become disqualified? And the Gemara said, Odil makevan de kadosh beklisharis ifsalu. Maybe we say, even though kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, it works from one day to the next, but maybe since the waters of the kior are sanctified in a klisharis, they are disqualified. Delo dami l'kiddush yadayim, maybe it's not similar to the sanctification of the hands, shahamayim nigvu, because they're already the water dried. V'yein lina al mi lachol, and therefore the lina, the fact again that it's now the next day, is not able to be chal, it can't take effect on anything because the water has already dried, but maybe in this case, again, where it's the water in the kior, that is still present in front of us, so therefore the lina maybe can take effect. And the Gemara continues, Kiyasa Ravin, when Ravin came again from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Ami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said that Rabbi Yirmiyah said that Rabbi Ami said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Hadar Pashat Ilfa, that then Ilfa answered his question, Kemachlokas Bazu, Kach Machlokas Bazu, the same Machlokas that applies by Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim applies by the waters as well, meaning according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, who says that there is no lina that disqualifies by Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, it would not disqualify the water as well. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lefan of Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna said in front of him, Rashi says, Amar Lefan of Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna Lefnei Rabbi Ami, he said in front of Rabbi Ami, the Bach has the Girsa in front of Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Kula Ravin Amar Lo. In any case, this entire statement is a continuation of Ravin's report. Ravin says again that Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna said in front of him, Rabbi Ata Omer Kain, Rabbi, do you say that? Elahachi Amar Rabasi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, but Rabasi said that Rabbi Yochanan said, the Bach has the Girsa of Rabbi Ami said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Mishmei Umay de Ilfa, in the name of Ilfa, Kior shalo shaku mi bo'erev. If you have a kior that was not lowered into the bore from the evening, it wasn't lowered into that cistern. Mekadesh mimenu lavodas laila. You can sanctify from that kior for any avoda that's done at night in the Beis Hamikdash. Ulamachar eino mekadesh, and the next day he is not mekadesh. V'havinan ban. We ask on that statement, what exactly does that mean? Lamachar eino mekadesh. When it says tomorrow he's not mekadesh, does that mean delot sarach lekiddush? Does that mean that kiddush, that sanctification, is not necessary? Because we're following the opinion of Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon on the previous Amud, that once you sanctify, that sanctification can be effective even for the next day. Or maybe ifsalu belina, maybe it means you're not able to be mekadesh from the kior because those waters have been disqualified through lina. V'lo pashadlon, and he did not answer the question to clarify exactly what was meant. So in other words, we don't know whether he says ifsalu belina or not. Umarka pashadle mifshad, and yet the master thinks that he has the answer to this question, that in fact it is disqualified. And Rashi explains, shalo shaku babor, again they did not lower it into the cistern. La'avodas laila, for the avoda at night. Lehekter chalavim, that's for the burning of the fats, which was done at night. V'havinon bon, we asked, kamei de Rabbi Yasi, in front of Rabbi Yasi, the Bach is the gears of Rabbi Ami. V'lo pashalon, he did not answer the question. Again, what does it mean? Does it mean delot sarich l'kedusha? Does it mean that it's not necessary to sanctify the next day? Uch Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, that would follow Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, delot pasal lina b'kiddush. He says that lina is not a disqualification by the sanctification of the hands and the feet. Oh, Dilmar, maybe what it means is ein ru'uyos l'kadish, that the water is not fit to use for sanctification. To ifsaluhu belina, that those waters are disqualified, again, belina, when they're overnight. V'afilu Rebbe Elazar, and that would be true even according to Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon. The ila Rebbe, because if you're following Rebbe, lekol miboyin sarach afilu b'kiddush pasal. According to Rebbe, it's obvious, because Rebbe says even when it comes to kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, that has to be done again the next day. That lina is a disqualification. It certainly would disqualify the waters. V'lo pashat Rabbi Yasi, and Rabbi Yasi did not answer the question. Again, the Bach has Rabbi Ami. V'lo pashat Rabbi Ami hachbayu l'meimar de'in sarach l'kadish ka'amar v'lo l'pos l'belina. He did not answer the question and say that it means you don't require a sanctification, but there's no disqualification of lina on the water. Kiddush ka'amrit, like you said, k'machlokas bazu kach machlokas bazu. You said the same machlokas that applies by kiddush yadayim v'raglayim applies to the water in the kior. Umar mifshat, umar pashat mifshat l'Rebbe Elazar lo pas l'belina. According to you, was obvious. The answer is that Rebbe Elazar does not disqualify belina, but again over here it seems to still be a question. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here a proof from the following Mishnah in Meseches Yuma. Ben Katin asa shneim asar dod l'kior. Ben Katin, who was a Kohen Gadol, he made 12 spigots for the kior, so that several Kohanim could wash their hands and feet at once. And Afu asa muchni l'kior, he also made a wheel for the kior, shalo yu meimav nifsalin belina, so that its water should not be disqualified through lina, through being left overnight. Rashi explains, Shnei Mosar Dod Shemotzian Meimav, again, the water would come out of these spigots, Ve'amrinan B'Seder Yuma, and we say Meseches Yuma Shiu Shnei Mosar Kohanim Hu Asukim B'Tamid Mekadshim B'Vas Achas. This way 12 Kohanim who are dealing with the carbon Tamid could all sanctify at the same time. And Muchni Mefarish Hasa, Muchni is explained over there, Galgalim, these were wheels, Shemalin Oso Begalgalim Min Habor Shachars. In the morning they'd be able to lift up the kior from the cistern using these wheels. Shalo Yehei Meimav Nifsalim Belina. The reason why they lowered the kior into the bore was so that its waters would not be disqualified through lina. Lefigach Meshakin also Arvis Babor. That's why in the evening they would lower it into the pit. Shiu Meimav Mechubarim Lemei Hamayin. And this way the waters of the kior would attach themselves to the waters of the spring, Uvat Lalinasan, and then the lina would be nullified. That was a way of avoiding the disqualification of lina. And the Gemara continues, my laugh, is it not? Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, he isn't the author of this Mishnah, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, and therefore it is clear that there is in general a psula lina, there's a disqualification of lina, according to Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. The way you avoid that is by lowering it into the bore, but otherwise there is that disqualification. Rashi explains, my lav afilu Rebbe Elazar kamarla, meaning this is even Rebbe Elazar. Tiafagav de polig bekiddush, even though he argues by the sanctification of the hands and the feet, he said there's no disqualification of lina over there. Shenigav, but over there he's talking again where the water already dried. Mo de b'mayim, he would admit by the waters of the kior that in fact they would be disqualified. And the Gemara continues and says, Lo no Rebbe. He actually, the author of that Mishnah might just be Rebbe. And again, Rebbe said there's a disqualification by Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, so there's going to be a disqualification, as we said, by the Mei Kior as well. There's no proof to what the answer is within Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. But the Gemara continues and asks, "V'hami dereisha Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon." But from the fact that the beginning of this Mishnah is Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, Seifa Nami Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, doesn't that show that the end also is Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon? The Katani Reisha, because what does it say in the beginning of the Mishnah? It says in the beginning of the Mishnah, Bolo Eitzel Paro, he came by his bull, Uparo Yomed Bein Ha'ulam V'lam Mizbeach, and the bull was standing between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. The Ulam again was the entrance hall into the Beis HaMikdash. So the par was between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. Rosho L'darim, its head was to the south. Upanav L'mayriv, and its face faced towards the west. V'hakohen Omed B'mizrach, and the Kohen would stand in the east. Upanav L'mayriv, and he would face the west. And so man shamatzle, who's the one that we understand holds? Diyamar bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach tzafon. Who's the one that says that between the ulam and the mizbeach is still considered to be tzafon? Because the halach is you're supposed to slaughter the animal in the tzafon in the north, and as we're about to see, there's a machlokus what's considered to be tzafon, and who's the one that says that bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach, which is what's going on in this Mishnah, is considered tzafon? That's Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. That's Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, and that would show that the beginning of this Mishnah is Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. Where do we see that Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon says that bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach is tzafon? The Tanya, because we learned in a brayso, ezehu tzafon. What is considered north? Mikir mizbeach tzafoni v'ad kosel azora tzafoni ucheneged kol mizbeach kulo tzafon divrei Rebbe Yossi Rebbe Yehuda. Rebbe Yossi Rebbe Yehuda says you have to go next to the mizbeach, and if you go north of the mizbeach until the wall of the azora, only that area directly to the north of the Mizbeach until the Azara, that's going to be considered to be Tzafon. Otherwise, it's not considered to be Tzafon. And the brayso continues, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon Mosef, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, he adds on, Af bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach, even the area, again, that's north of the mizbeach, but that's not right, that's not directly north of the mizbeach, rather it's a little bit northwest, it's between the ulam and the mizbeach, that also would be considered to be north, and so you see Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon says, bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach is considered north, and the brayso continues, Rebbe Mosef, Rebbe adds, Af mokom drisas ragle hakohanim u'mokom drisas ragle Yisrael, even the area of the Azara, where the Kohanim are allowed to step and where the Yisraelim are allowed to step. Now that was actually towards the eastern side, so it would be northeast of the Mizbeach. Even that area is considered to be north, meaning when you would enter the Azara, there would be an area where the Yisraelim could go until. That was Makom Drisas Ragle Yisrael. Then you go a little further in, that was Makom Drisas Ragle Kohanim, where the Kohanim could stand. So he expands it even to that area is considered north. Avol min ha-chalifos v'lifnim, but from the chalifos and inwards, the chalifos was the areas where they kept the knives, and though that was essentially really behind the ulam, so it would have been the north part of the Beis HaMikdash, but essentially next to the Beis HaMikdash itself in the north, that already hakol modim shapasel, that everybody agrees is disqualified. It is not considered to be north. And Rashi explains, Bolo Kohen Gadol Eitzel Paro, the Kohen Gadol would come next to his bull, his vados olav, to confess over it, B'yom HaKippurim on Yom Kippur, T'chsiv v'chiber ba'ado, like it's written in the pasuk, Rosho l'darim u'panav l'mayrav. Now the animal would be situated that its head would be to the south and its face would be to the west, meaning as follows. Mitzafon l'darim hayomid, it was standing from north to south. So the animal was standing essentially in this direction within the diagram. It was from north to south. Hayomid, that's how it stood. Upanav l'mayr, but then you faced its head towards the west. So you turned its head towards the west. V'hasam mefarish la ba'okem es rosho. It's explained over there again that it would turn its head. V'hasam parich, and over there the question is asked, Look me lahed yomi mizrach l'mayr, why not just have it stand from east to west? U'mishanin Allah, the Gemara over there answers that. And Rashi continues, V'akohen omer achorav l'mizrach, the Kohen would be standing, his back would be to the east, klape ha-mizbeach, towards the mizbeach, upanav l'mayrav, and then his face would be to the west, klape ha-hechol, towards the hechol. The Amina time hasam, we give the reason over there, essentially again the Kohen would stand, he would be facing the west, and then his back would be towards the east. And Rashi continues, Man shamat le damar, who's the one that says, again, bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach, it's considered to be north. That's Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. Tekatani bepirka de basrei, because we learn in the parak after, shachtu v'kiba min vizrak es damo, they slaughter, they receive the blood, samach leviduy of miyad, immediately next to the confession. Alma we see, bein ha'ulam v'la mizbeach tzafunu, that again, between the ulam and the mizbeach is considered north. L'shchita as kachei kachim, in terms of slaughtering kachei kachim, to ha'par chatasu, because this bull was a chatas, which is kachei Kachim. And again, the Gemara then brought the Brisa. The first opinion of the Brisa was Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who says Keneged Kol HaMizbeach, that what's north it has to be parallel to the Mizbeach, Keneged Tzvono, meaning the north of the Mizbeach, V'lo min HaMizbeach v'holoi, but you can't leave that area of the Mizbeach, lo letzad Mizrach v'lo letzad Ma'ariv, you can't go east or west. V'afa bishu b'chatzi chelek Azara Hatzvoni, even if he's in the north half of the Azara, lav kosher l'shchitas chatas, it is still not kosher for slaughtering the chatas, debinan al yerech HaMizbeach, it has to be next to the Mizbeach v'lek, and you don't have that, meaning according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, the area north of the Mizbeach has to be directly north of the Mizbeach, this area over here, but let's say from this line of the Mizbeach you can't go beyond to the west, from this line of the Mizbeach you can't go beyond to the east, it has to be directly in this area to the north of the Mizbeach, according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Lazar Mosif af bein ha'ulam v'la Mizbeach, Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, he says, even between the ulam and the Mizbeach, meaning in this area north of the Mizbeach, but it could be a little west, essentially northwest of the Mizbeach, this whole area as well is considered north, Shuma Ravo Shal Mizbeach, the west of the Mizbeach, Uvilvad Sheyechelek Tzvono Shal Azara, you just have to be in the north of the courtyard. Aval Mizracho Shal Mizbeach Letzad Shar Nikanor, but let's say you would be this area east of the Mizbeach, essentially the northeast part, towards Shar Nikanor, Shabo Nichnasan LaAzara, where you enter the Azara, Lo Machshir, that's not kosher, Afilu Chelek Tzvoni, even the northern side, even if you're in the northern half, Tequila Kedushase, because there the Kedusha is less, Tehumakam Drisas Yisrael v'Kohanim, that's the area where the Yisraelim and then the Kohanim are able to walk, Drisas Yisrael v'Kohanim, Yod Aleph Amma Makam Drisas Yisrael men Hashar v'Lefnim, the Yisraelim, they get 11 amos from the gate and inward, V'Yod Aleph Amma Ad Letzad HaMizbeach Makam Shal Drisas Raglei HaKohanim, then you go another 11 amma deeper into the Azara, that's the area where the Kohanim can even go. And then Rebbe Mosif, Rebbe said, Af Tzafon Shaba'osan Esrim Mushtayim, even the north of those 22 Esrim Mushtayim Amos Shal Tzad Mizrach, even those 22 amos eastern, meaning the northeast of the Mizbeach, Shein Drisas Yisrael v'Kohanim, meaning according to Rebbe, even this area is considered to be the north where you can slaughter the Kachei Kachim. And Rashi continues, Hachi Garcina, and this is the proper text, Aval min hal Chalifos v'lefnim, but from the Chalifos and inward, Hakol Modim Shapasal, everybody agrees that's disqualified. Umiu, nevertheless, Beis Chalifos ha'ulam, the area of the Chalifos of the ulam, Odef Rochvo, al Rocha v'hechol tesvav amal etzafon v'tesvav l'daram, the width of the ulam, because of the Chalifos, went 15 amos more than the hechol to the north, and 15 amos more to the south, meaning to say, this was the ulam, the entryway, the entrance hall into the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash would have just been this width, but the ulam itself was wider because of these Beis Chalifos that went 15 amos in the north direction and the south direction. V'hu nikra Beis HaChalifos, that was called the Beis HaChalifos, Shaya Bekosel ha'ulam me'acharav chalonos, in the wall of the ulam, in the back of that wall, from the outside there were windows, Sha'kohanim matzniyan sham esakineim, and that's where the Kohanim would place their knives. They would place their knives in the outside windows of these Beis HaChalifos. V'sakin kari chilaf b'lashon Aravi, a sakin is referred to as a chilaf in Arabic. And Rashi continues, Hachi Tnan la b'Meseches Midos, this is how we learn it in the Mishnah in Meseches Midos, Vashmeinon, and it's teaching us the me'achorei ha'ulam, that if you're already behind the ulam, lav tzafon, who that's not considered north, l'shchitas kachei kachim, in terms of slaughtering kachei kachim, meaning if you're already beyond this area, even though you're in the north, but you're already essentially behind in the back of the ulam, that's not considered to be tzafon for the slaughtering of kachei kachim. Tekeven d'lo mischazim mizbeach chasim, since you're already in an area where you can't see the mizbeach, lo karina al yerech, that's not called next to the mizbeach. Afagav the machsharina leila kamon l'shchitas kachim kalim. Now, even though later on we'll say it's kosher to slaughter in that area for kachim kalim, but l'kachei kachim possible. For kachei kachim, it is a disqualified area. And in any case, the point of the Gemara over here is that you see from this brisa that Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach is considered Safon, according to Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon. And again, what does it say in the Reisha of the Mishnah Meseches Yuma? It says, Par Ha'yomed Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach. So that would seem to indicate that the Mishnah is in fact following Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon. And so the Gemara now continues and asks, V'tizbra, but is this really logical? Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, he v'lo Rebbe? Do you think that it's Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon and not Rebbe? Hashta Rebbe ad Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Mosif. Rebbe is adding, and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Rabbi Yehuda. Ad Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Lomos, if you think he's not adding on Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, meaning to say, if you look at this brisa that we brought, so the brisa had three opinions. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, he was the most limited. He said that north has to be directly north of the Mizbeach. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon added even the areas that are northwest, meaning Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach. And Rebbe says he seems to be adding even more area, the area northeast, the Drisas Ragle Kohanim and Drisas Ragle Yisrael. And therefore Rebbe also agrees that Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach is certainly considered to be the north. So how can you say the Mishnah is following Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon and not Rebbe? It's certainly going to be Rebbe as well. Certainly Rebbe has more area where you're allowed to slaughter the Kadshe Kadshim. And so the Gemara continues and says, Anon Hachi Kamrin, and this is what we mean to say. Isal Gadaitach Rebbe, if you think that this Mishnah is Rebbe, Lukma b'makom Drisas Ragle Kohanim u'v'makom Drisas Ragle Yisrael, it would make more sense to slaughter the animal in the area to the northeast, where the Kohanim and the Yisraelim are allowed to walk. And therefore, the fact that we're not doing it over there, the fact that we're going more inward, indicates that we're following Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, and that's why, again, we're doing it Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach. But the Gemara still asks, Elamai, but what are you going to say? Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon here, you're going to say it's Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, but if the idea is that you should always do it in the earliest spot, the most to the east, so look, Mamikir Mizbeach Tzafoni ad Kosel Azar Tzafoni. So still, according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, why should you enter all the way Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach to do the slaughtering? You can just do the slaughtering north of the Mizbeach. The same logic. If you're saying that according to Rebbe, you might as well do the slaughtering in the northeast, so according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, you might as well do it directly north of the Mizbeach. So you have really the same question. Why should you be doing it Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach? That's the Gemara's question. Again, you should have just done it according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, Mikir Mizbeach Tzfoni at Kosel Azar Tzfoni. Elamayis Loch Lememer. So what do you have to answer? Mishum Chulsha de Kohen Gadol. The reason why we're trying to do it as close to the Beis HaMikdash as possible is because of the weakness of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. We don't want to make him walk so much, and so we slaughter it as close to the Beis HaMikdash as possible, and that's why we do it Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach. So Hachanami here also Mishum Chulsha de Kohen Gadol. According to Rebbe also, it's equally possible that this mission is Rebbe, but the reason why we slaughter Bein Ha'ulam V'la Mizbeach is because, again, we want to get into this area as close to the Beis HaMikdash as possible. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Some Rabbi Yochanan says, Kidesh Yodav V'Raglav L'Trumas Hadeshin. Let's say a Kohen sanctifies his hands and his feet. He washes his hands and his feet for the Trumas Hadeshin, which is the removal of the ashes, which takes place very early in the morning. It's the first avodah of the day before dawn. So the halacha is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, L'Machar, the next day, meaning after dawn, Eino Tzarech L'Kadesh, he doesn't have to be Mekadesh, he doesn't have to sanctify his hands and feet again. Shakvar Kidesh Mitchilas Avodah, he already has sanctified from the beginning of the avodah. And the Gemara asks Laman, now who is Rabbi Yochanan speaking according to? Is he going according to Rebbe, or is he going according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon? Ila Rebbe, if he says going according to Rebbe, Ha'amar Posla Lina, but Rebbe's the one that says that Lina is a disqualification, so of course the Kohen should have to wash again after dawn. And Ila Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, if you hold like Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, Ha'amar Ein Tzarech L'Kadesh Afilu Mikan, V'yad Asar Yom, he says there's no need to sanctify again, even from now until 10 days, as long as there's no Hesach Hadas, as long as you're not turning your attention away from the avodah, there's no need to wash the hands and the feet again. And so therefore it would not make sense to say that the reason is because kvar kidesh mitchilas avodah. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon in general says you don't need to be mekadesh again. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, Liolam LeRevi. Actually, Rabbi Yochanan is talking according to Rebbe. Velina derabanan, but Rebbe only holds that Lina is a derabanan, meaning if you have a situation where it's left overnight, so to speak, that only requires Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim again on a derabanan level. Umodi, and therefore Rebbe admits the mikros hagever, v'yad from the time the rooster crows until the morning, just that short amount of time, lo pasla Lina, then Lina is not going to be a disqualification. Rav Amar Rava says, Liolam Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yochanan is following Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. V'ro Rabbi Yochanan devarav b'tchilas avod. And Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon at the beginning of the avodah. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan would say, in this particular situation where it really is the first avodah of the day, so then you don't need to be mekadesh again. V'lo b'sof avodah, but not at the end of the avodah. Meaning, let's say when we're talking about the avodas that take place at night, at the end of the day, after the day, so there already, you don't say that in the morning you don't have to wash again. Rabbi Yochanan would not agree. He would not go as far as Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon in that regard. In such a situation, at the new day, you would have to wash again. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from a Mishnah in Meseches Talmud. Ra'u echav ha-kohanim sheyard, when his brethren, the Kohanim, saw him coming down from doing the Trumas Hadeshen, v'hein rotzu uvo miaru v'kitru yadeim v'ragleim min ha-kior, and they would run and come, and they would quickly sanctify their hands and their feet from the kior, from the basin. And Rashi explains, Ra'u echav sheyard, his brethren saw him coming down. Mishnah hi b'Meseches Talmud, this is a Mishnah Meseches Talmud. B'Torah Mes Hadeshen, there was a Kohen who removed the ashes, sheyard, he came down from the Mizbeach. He had the pan of the Trumas Hadeshen in his hand. Miaru v'kitcho. So then the other Kohanim, they quickly sanctified lahotzias Hadeshen shebemakom har maroch, in order to take out the deshen that was by the area of the flames on the Mizbeach. O lesalko letapuach, or sometimes they would remove it to the heap shebeemsa Mizbeach, which was in the middle of the Mizbeach. V'hachi tanan ba, and this is what the Mishnah over there says. V'hachi tanan bahasam. It says over there in the Mishnah, hechalu malin be'efer al gabe hatapuach. Again, they began to take the ashes and put it into this heap. Because salka daitach bekohanim she'avdu kol halayla koi. Now, right now, the Gemara thinks that the Mishnah is discussing Kohanim who worked the entire night, umikudshe yadayim v'raglayim hayu, and therefore they had already sanctified their hands and their feet. Utzrichen lachzor lakadesh achshav, and now the Mishnah is saying they have to go again and sanctify another time. Shetimshach avoda zu ad hayom, because this avod is going to go until the day. V'yivsel kiddush halayla belinas amud hashachar. When the dawn will come, that's going to disqualify the sanctification they did at night. V'yoel lahem kiddush zeh shal achar kros hagever. And this sanctification that they're doing after the rooster crows, that is going to be effective for them. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Amud Beis.